You know, and I prayed the prayer, and I was so embarrassed by all this that I was going to walk home from church and not go home with them. So I walked out, and I leave the church, and I walked down the street a little bit, and I heard this voice, clear as a bell. It just said David. And I was very streetwise, and I looked around, nobody's around me. And I was very aware it was him that said my name. From then on, things were different. But I saw and experienced his love in my grandmother. In the same way that guy in church grabbed onto me, and I experienced his love through my wife, and she experienced it through me. That's what he wants. That's what we're called the body of Christ. And so when you care for people in ways that are beyond what is normally human, that doesn't mean I buy him a car because he needs a car. But the care that they feel coming from you is beyond something that's natural. That's when they say, what's going on here? Who are you? What's happening here? There's something here that's transcending humanity. And that's what he wants for us. That's what he wants for us. The problem is, so he wants people to experience his wisdom, his truth, his love is present through us, etc. And in fact, it says in Romans 12:1 and 2, most people never talk about this because it was right to what you said earlier, Rusty. It says in Romans 12:1 and 2, what you do in your body, in terms of manifesting God's love, what you do in this tangible fleshly thing is your spiritual service to God. I don't know anybody who gets that. What you do in your flesh and your body is your spiritual service to God. You could trip on that for a long time. It's so powerful. Anyway. But there's a problem. And this is the verse I said last night, 1 Corinthians 14:32. The spirit of the prophet is subject to the prophet. That means God's manifesting himself through me, whether it's through his gifts or anything else, is subject to my humanity. How developed or how screwed up it is. Now, we all know pastors that we like listening to them. They have things to say to us, but we also look at them and go, they got some things pretty screwed up here. Most of us know pastors like that. That means their humanity's messed up. Their spirituality has not fixed their humanity yet, like we talked about last night in David and Saul. And so there's a problem. And so how do we fix this? Well, John the Baptist said something I think that's very important in Matthew 3:3. He said, prepare the way of the Lord, make his path straight. Most of the time we hear that as repentance. I hear it as 1,000 times more than that. I hear it like this. I'm on the porch in my house, and Jesus is out on the street, and he wants to come up to me and meet me, but he can't get to me. Because I got a fence around my yard, and the gate's closed and locked. I got dogs in the yard barking. The walkway up to where I am, we got little kids pull on there, bicycles on there, and there's all these obstacles. John is saying it's my job to remove those obstacles. It's my job to straighten out my humanity. That's what he's saying. Now, I can be sitting on the porch and say, yes, I need to do this, but I don't know how to do it. Lord, can you jump the fence and come over here to meet me and teach me how to clear all this stuff out of there? And he will. The last chapter in my book is about all that. And he does that, but he wants me to clear all these obstacles and all this stuff out of the way so that he can come up to me and visit me in a pure way. So, how do I say it? Let me do it like this for a second. When I was an intern, they gave us this book to read by a guy named Frank Pittman called Man Enough. He's a secular author, but what he says in that book is so profound. He said, for us men, it's called Man Enough, he said our dads are supposed to validate us in our masculinity as we grow up and embrace our boyhood and masculinity and all there. Dads do a little bit of that, but not a lot of that. Because as you emerge and become male, guess what you're going to do? You're going to test limits. You're going to test dad's authority. Most dads go, who the heck do you think you are, kid? And go just like this. My son tests me all the time. Because that's how he finds out how much power he has, how much power I have, what the limits are, how his power and authority work. That's all the things he's trying to discover as a boy. And so Frank Pittman said, if our dads don't affirm our masculinity as we grow up and validate us that way, we grow up not feeling adequate as a man. We grow up feeling inadequate as a man. And that's how I felt growing up. That's how most men feel growing up. And so what happens then is, if I don't feel adequate as a man, guess what I have to do? Prove to everybody I am one. How do we do that? How big my muscles are. How much money's in the bank. How fast my car is. Fill in the blanks, right? That's what we do. And to prove to myself and everybody else I am a man. I see so many men doing that, 90% of us. And we have this little thing we joke about a little bit. You know what we call Harley Davidson motorcycles? PEDs. Penile enhancement devices. They don't know they have a penis. They don't know they're a man. So I got my big Harley here to prove to myself and everybody else I'm a man and I got a penis. What do you think? If you know you're a man, you don't have to prove it to anybody. You don't have to demonstrate it to anybody. You intrinsically know that you are, and we'll get to that stuff. And so what he says then is we got to prove it to everybody. And at the same time then, women become all important. Because a woman can say yay or nay to my masculinity. So they have a lot of power. Like I said, I couldn't ask her out unless I knew she was going to say yes. Because I didn't feel adequate as a man. And so Pittman talks about this. And I'm reading this book on, man, I'm the poster child here. This is my life right here. How do you fix it? And I was already in the process of fixing it, not knowing it when I got turned on to this book. But what he said is you have to be with a group of men, formally or informally, that give you all the validation and see value in you and the attaboys that your dad was supposed to and never did. And at that time, I had some friends, two guys that owned this really nice Italian restaurant. And there was about a group of 7 or 8 of us. We always had at least 4 there, but always maybe 7 or 8. Where when they would close at 10 o'clock at night, we would go down there at least 2 nights, maybe 3 nights a week, and we'd be in there from like 10 to 2 in the morning. Just talking about everything. And when I got hold of this book, I went in there and I said, guys, guess what we're doing here? We're all giving us the attaboys and the acceptance that our dads never gave us. That's what we're doing with each other here. Because we can talk about everything and anything. There was a time there one time, it was when I finally got done school, good God, and I got a practice move, and I actually made a little bit of money for the first time in like 10 years. And there was a shirt for sale that I saw that was $30, and I said, good God, that's a lot of money. But I had the money, and I gave myself permission to buy it. And I went, wow, things have changed. But I told these guys that story with the shirt. I said, but guess what? I stole stuff all week. I stole this pen from the doctor's office. I changed this tag on a shirt at the store the other day. Because we could be open with each other and talk this way with each other. And the guys would say the same kind of things with me. How long do you think we hung out together to heal each other up? We were together about 5 years. 2 to 3 nights a week. Doing all this. 3 of us were ex-pastors. And doing all this. It was very interesting, this group. One night I was there with these guys, a little bit different group. Every one of them was millionaires. I'm a starving college student. But we had the honesty where I could say, God, look at you guys. You got more money than God, I think. I don't have anything. But I'm 10 times healthier than you guys because of all the education and counseling I've been through. And they'd say, yeah, David, we're jealous. You got that. They said, can we trade some money for some of this? You know? I'll give you some of this, you give me some of that. But we can talk and be so open and honest about everything. And we were healing ourselves up. That's what you want to do. As I said last time about recovery, you want the person back in the shadows to be the person that shares. Not this person out here. And it's like this. When two people get to know each other, you have a public self and you have a private self. When you get to know each other, the two public selves relate to each other a little bit, and that's the relationship. Maybe you get to know a little more. What happens when people date is the two public selves dating, we don't really expose very much of the private selves to each other. We hide all that. I've heard probably at least 30 times women saying, on my wedding day or the honeymoon, the other shoe dropped. And I found out who he really was. Because now that I caught her, I don't have to be on good behavior anymore. I can just be me now.
Yeah.
And they discovered this. And I went, oh my God. I've only known two women ever who got out like that. All the rest of them stay. Why do women stay? Because they're relationally optimistic. They value connection. They hope it's going to get better. They want to avoid the conflict. So they stay till it kills them. One gal like this, she married him. She got a call from the IRS within a month. Are you Mrs. So-and-so? Well, yes. We just want you to know he owes us X amount of money. And now that you're married, we're going to put a lien on your house. And your house now belongs to us. She went just like this. And severe depression for a year. And a friend of his actually called her and said, I know where he has some assets. And let her know. She said, I'm so sorry for her. She got that, called the IRS and said, if you take the lien off my house, I'll tell you about this. And they said, yes. They took the lien off, did that, she enforced it. And so what I always tell people, you don't get married until you've experienced all of the other person. Now my wife, she was raised in a family where nobody ever got angry, ever. Of any kind. No disagreements of any kind. Except for when her brother came home with a motorcycle he just bought. And Mom went nuts over that. But, so the first time she saw my anger, I was very angry about something. She looked at me in the passenger seat of the car and said, oh my God, and got out and walked home. And so I go over to her house the next day, and she looks at me. I go, well, okay, now you've seen the worst of it. What do you think? She said, wow. And how often does this happen? and so on and so forth. Before we got married, she exposed some things back here of her. I said, I can live with that. Okay, we get married. The research says if you date effectively, it takes 1 to 2 years to get to know each other. But, so, what was I going to say? So while we're talking about that, I'll say this next piece. We've got a lot of single people here. When I was 23 or so, I was involved in this church, and we had a lot of us that were single. We were all very connected, and a lot of the guys lived in one house, a lot of the girls lived in the other house, and we were together all the time and everything. And somebody was always falling in love with somebody. And it would be very frustrating, because some girl would fall in love with me that wasn't interested, or I'd fall in love with her, she wasn't interested, but that would always happen all the time. And I came across this little booklet called The ABCs of Relationships by a gal named Pamela Reed, and it's out of print now, and this book saved my entire life. She broke all relationships down into A level, B level, C level. A level is just an acquaintance. B level is friendship. C level is an intimate friend where you share things with the C person you don't share with your B friends. And she said, if you're sharing on a C level, it automatically creates more romantic interest. So we're all having C level sharing, so everybody's getting cockeyed romantic interest. And so I read this and I said, okay, that's what's going on here. But the thing that I didn't like is, she's saying here that you can't have a C-level relationship with someone of the opposite sex unless you're going to want to date him. And I said, you mean I can't have C-level friendships with women anymore? I didn't like that. Why did I need C-level friendships with women? Because of what Frank Bittman said. I was not adequate as a man. So when we're that way, guess what? We are so attracted to the comfort and the soothing and the validation of a woman. And so that's what I'm going there for. And I said, my God, if I can't have that, then I'm stuck with all this inadequacy with no comfort. That really sucks to be me. And he said you can only have C-level relationship with guys of the same sex or people of the same sex, or if you're married, you can't have C-level relationships with anybody outside the marriage. And so you can only have B there. So, but I figured out a way around it. And then the way I did it was this. If after church on Thursday night, a girl and I would talk, just a friend of mine, and we'd talk and have C-level conversations, I learned I was not going to have another one with her for at least 6 weeks. So it got spread out enough so no romantic interest could happen, and I happened to have 5 or 6 girls like that in my life. So I could have a C-level conversation with a woman every week, but it was a different woman, so then we wouldn't get over-involved with each other, and it all straightened out. It was fantastic. That book saved my life. And she said if you're dating somebody and you have a C-level relationship and you break up, it has to go all the way back to an A, where you're just an acquaintance until all the romantic interests are gone, then you can go back to a B. I said, this is it. So I started learning how to have C friendships, spread it out enough where I could enjoy that, they could enjoy that, and it was great. And I wasn't yet, right after that is when I got hooked up with the guys in the restaurant. And we started doing things that appealed to each other. So that little piece of information, I think, is just so valuable for any of us that are dating and carrying on. But how do we get to this place? Then it goes like this. We're actually a cup inside where our self is supposed to develop. Our parents are supposed to be full enough emotionally to deposit into us, like you see, and where the baby birds can come and drink out of us emotionally. When they do that, we're supposed to get about that much of what we need from our parents, that much from siblings and extended family, that much from friends, that much from a spouse, that much from God, and that much we don't get in this life. But what happens for most of us is, make this a little smaller, we get about that much from our family, maybe about that much from friends, and we got this empty cup in here. That's called the missing self. I have a whole chapter on that in my book. Well, if you go to church, what do they tell you? Give yourself to God and He'll fill you up. Guess what? That will never happen. And I'll tell you why. This is the self. God's not interested in replacing your self with His self. He's interested in growing and maturing and developing yourself so that I have a robust self from which to experience His self. Does that make sense to you? Absolutely. You cannot have a we unless you have 2 robust eyes. An example I give for that for Christians is the Trinity. Here the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, their eye of who they are is so robust, their self is so robust and developed that they're their own entity. But in their own entity, when they connect together, they have a profound sense of we. And so we know that each individual part is fully God, but we also know they connect in their God. And so the Trinity is actually the model for us relationally. But God, so what happens when we're like this, guess what? I'm going to go date somebody whose cup's just like that too. Why do we do that? Because we identify with the emptiness. We identify, we feel it. And the result then is, we get together, but the problem is, I don't have enough for me, let alone to give very much to you. And you don't have enough for you to give very much to me. So this relationship is very high in emotional need and very low in emotional resources. That used to be me.
Greek there.
That's gibberish, chicken scratch.
Chicken scratch.
when I used to write as a kid, my family could never read the notes. This is what we call a conflictually dependent relationship.
Hey David, let me put something in here. This is where in 7 years, everyone, Michelle and I and others have seen hundreds of people come from stubborn recovery. And we've gotten close to a lot of them. And every time there's a relapse, it's because of a bad relationship. So y'all listen to this.
Well, what happens is, we're going to argue about who's going to take care of who. And the unconscious, unspoken assumption is, if you would just act decent and take care of me, I'd be okay. Then I feel good enough I can take care of you. And this person over here is saying the same thing. Well, if you just get your head out of your rear end and take care of me, then I feel good enough I can take care of you. And we're going to fight about it. When I get couples in the office fighting about that, I love saying this next part. Guess what? The person with the most maturity is the one that's going to blink first. And say, all right, I'll do this for you. Because I want to inspire someone to be that person. So that's that, right? So God doesn't want to fill this up. We'll get to this in a minute. So here's the other one like this. It's a different animal. I have a robust sense of self in here and who I am. I don't have all those empty spaces anymore. And like attracts like, so I find someone like that too. So guess what? I got plenty for me. I don't need much from you to be okay. Over here, I'm not okay unless you fill my cup, but you can't because you don't have anything. Doesn't matter. I need you to fill it, so get over here and fill it, no matter what. And I'll reward, punish, do anything to get you to do this. Over here, I don't need that much from you. So this relationship is very low emotional need and very high in emotional resources. It's an entirely different animal. And a person like this experiences God in ways you can't imagine, because there's a lot of me now that is available to experience it. I tell people, is the world like a whiteboard? If my parents don't give me very much, a lot of hardship growing up, my whiteboard is very small. It's got a lot of junk plastered all over it. I'm going to have a hard time experiencing God. Hard time being functional. So what I've learned to do in therapy and counseling is, hey, you know what? We can get all the junk off your board, and we can grow yourself to where it's robust and large. Now they know who they are, what's going on. They can really connect with other people, and they can experience God now in ways they never thought possible. And we haven't done a single spiritual thing. We've just followed the advice of John the Baptist and fixed the part of you inside that experiences God. Which is go to there. Yes, ma'am.
Can you ever get like a relationship where there's high emotional need and the other person got the lower?
You're ahead of me. That's what I'm drawing next.
Oh.
You're way ahead of me.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry. That's brilliant. Here's the next one. Guess what? That doesn't exist. No longer than 2 months. Because this person feels a lot of shame and a lot of inferiority. They recognize they're deficient. They feel shame. It doesn't take them very long to leave because of that. This person gives them lots of stuff in here, but it doesn't fill them up 90% of the time. It just runs out the bottom of the cup. So you give enough, and you finally get depleted to here, and you say, oh, that's it, I can't give any more. Then you leave. Oh. That's what happens. My first wife was like this. And we were only married 1 year. The end of the year she left. She said, I can't do this anymore. And I said, and the reason why is I said, as soon as we got married, you got in the ring, gate closed, the lock went click, and I felt your anxiety went to the moon and never came back. She said that's exactly what happened because of problems in her previous marriage. And so rather than deal with them, she chose to leave the marriage. Her kids loved me to death. I loved them. And I said, really? She wouldn't go to counseling or nothing. Since then, we divorced, and I said, go get some help here. Great, I'll get this stuff fixed. She did. She went to see somebody for 2 years, got remarried, and is now doing great. But everything I gave her fell out the bottom of the cup. The wife I'm married to now, everything I gave her filled her cup. She's up to there. And a couple of years ago, I teared up and I said, you've become my equal. She teared up and said, how did that happen? I said, because you're open. You've taken everything in. And you've grown and developed, and so we're at this now. Think of the homes we grow up in. We grow up in a home like this or a home like that. That's where I grew up. We're going to get to that in a minute. And so lots of issues come. So what God wants to do, through all the stuff we've been talking about, learning to care for myself, putting the parts of me that need care into the hands of other people where they can care, all these things, He wants us to grow up and fill up. I remember when I was 21 or 2, if I had conflict with a girl dating, the Holy Spirit showed me one time really clearly. I had this cup inside that was filled with unresolved crap from childhood, all the way up almost to the very top. There's about that much space left. And the difficulty I was having with this girl, which wasn't that much, filled the rest of this cup to overflowing, and all I wanted to do was get out of here. And I said, you know what? That cup needs to get cleaned out, but I don't know how to do it. I was so aware that cup needs to get cleaned out. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. And so, cup gets cleaned out, you learn to care for the parts inside, and everything starts changing. Question, comments, anybody? That make sense? Okay, that's the easy basic part. Now we're going to get the more technical part. And we're going to do some things to fix it. There's a guy in his 60s named Eric Byrne wrote a book called Games People Play. Title, so interesting. And he said this is how personalities are configured, and I don't think anybody's improved on it anywhere. But he said we're made up of an adult, then we have a parental part inside that's either a critical parent or a nurturing parent. Then we have a child part inside, which would be our original feeling child. That's the kid that runs through the sprinklers naked, rubbing their belly, having the time of their life. That's that kid. But if we're not allowed to play and be that way in our family, and we get disciplined and hurt and everything else, we then develop a sobbing, hurting child that holds our pain and hurt. Well, the natural response to getting hurt is what? Push back with anger to protect ourselves. So you develop an angry child. You may not know it, but anger is actually considered a secondary emotion. What you experience first is hurt, loss, sadness, disappointment. For us guys, we don't feel those feelings because that involves vulnerability. We go straight to the anger. That's what I used to do. Women get stuck in feeling the hurt, the sadness, the loss, and disappointment, and you actually have to help them get angry a lot of times. So when I started learning this, I said, wow. And I got tired of cleaning up the messes my anger was always creating. And some of the books were telling me about this. And I said, okay, I got to learn then to get in touch with the hurt and the sadness and deal with things from there, not from the anger part. When I first was slowing down my anger enough that I could feel the hurt and sadness and stuff, it was so overwhelming, I didn't even have capacity to feel it. I just immediately would turn to anger. I said, oh my God, look at how much hurt and sadness there is there. My cup's really full. So I had to get that cup cleaned out to where I could feel the hurt and sadness and deal with things on that place. Because when you deal with it out of there, almost nothing bad happens. It's almost always constructive. And so I had to learn all that. Well, if it's not safe to go and play, not safe to express how hurt and sad I am, it's not safe to get angry because I'll get my head handed to me by dad or somebody else. I then develop a controlling child that holds it all together. So I'll get people in the office who want to start crying, and this kid steps up and says, don't you dare do that. Or somebody wants to get angry, this kid steps up and says, don't you dare. So now look at this next piece, folks. Here we got adult part, parental part, critical, nurturing, child part, original feeling child, angry child, controlling child. Look at all the dynamics going on in one person, going on in the other person. Look at all the dynamics going on in a marriage.
Wow.
All these parts are operating in a marriage. And guess what? We don't even know it. All I know is if you don't mirror me and do it the way I want, I'm all bent out of shape, so I'm going to make you mirror me. Other person does the same thing, we're going to have lots of hardship, lots of problems. So how do you fix all this? You got to get the adult part. First off, what is an adult?
An old person.
Maybe in West Virginia or Beverly Hills, you know, but what? What's an adult? An adult is a high-functioning part of us. It's a part of us that's capable and competent. I thought I was all adult, but after I learned some of this stuff, I go, my God, I'm about 5% adult. You know, that's about all I was. I had so much growing up to do, it was insane. I had friends getting married then, and I knew if I got married, I'd clearly be divorced in probably about 3 months. And so I did not get married. I knew I didn't have the maturity for it. And so I had so much more growing up to do. And there's very little written out there about how to become an adult. And one really good book is called Changes That Heal by John Townsend, Henry Cloud. It's a great book, talking about all how to resolve some of these dynamics and grow into an adult. Great book.
What was the author's name?
Henry Cloud or John Townsend. And so what you got to do is you got to take the adult part of you, go down here, pick up the nurturing parental parts, and then bring that part down there to take care of these kids. Remember the story last night about the teddy bear? That girl with her hurt little girl over here, she's totally cut off from her because of all the pain. She had to get her adult to bring her nurturing parental part down there to care for that part, and she healed up. So what I do in marriage counseling is I get people to recognize these dynamics. And if my partner is acting out over here, I'm not going to let my critical parent show up and say, what the hell's wrong with you? Why are you acting like this? Come on, straighten out. Get it together. I'm going to let my nurturing parental part come over and say, honey, what's going on? What's making things harder, crisis for you right now? How can I help you with this? And address that child. And I even teach couples to get to the point, how old is that part of you inside? That's up right now. What do they need? What did they need back then at 7? What do they need right now? When you start doing that, you change the whole thing. And so when you see in the Gospels, Jesus' relationship with Peter, Peter was a big, angry child, a controlling child. He was completely out of control. Jesus did not relate to him with the critical parent. Jesus had his nurturing parental part constantly reach out and love on Peter, and it finally broke him down. And that's what we want to do with each other. Be in the kind of relationships where you can expose those parts. Like the guys in the restaurants I hung out with. And then in graduate school and all, they make you go to group therapy. And I was in this group therapy, and one of these guys could come in every week and just be honest and straight and transparent. And he used to really piss me off because I couldn't do that. And he'd sit next to me and do this. And it irritated me all week long. And finally I tried to think, I couldn't do it. The best I could get was after 6 weeks, I finally said to him, Bill, we come in every week and you just are able to put it out there like that, and you just piss me off because you set the bar up here and I can't do that. It scares me to death. And it's taken me 6 weeks to figure out to say this much and get the courage to say this much, and this is all I can do.
That's progress.
Well, the gal that was running the group, I thought for sure rocks were coming because I'm failing. And she said to me, David, we are so thrilled you shared that with us. I about fell out of my chair. What? Oh, we're so proud of you for sharing that. We'll help you with this. Huh? And so every week they would ask me the right questions, and within 2 or 3 weeks I could share the way he was sharing. So now the parts of me that are in the background that needed care were actually out here and getting interaction with people. And it was starting to change me and heal me. And so going back to the vulnerability thing and doing all that is the whole name of the game. Questions, comments, anybody? My clients, after we get into this with them, we start healing them up like that guy that couldn't get on an airplane. His little kid was so in control. We're not getting on that plane. He's going to kill us. We're not going. Didn't have enough adults to deal with that kid at all. When we got that straightened out, that boy was not scared anymore, and that kid was not running the show. So the other thing here, that's piece of it. Then we're going to take a little break, and then we're going to do something different when we come back. Because here's 2 people. Trying to write legible.
Is that filter?
Filter. Here's 2 people. And they meet. And they filter everything about how much you're going to see of me, how much you're going to know of me, how much you're going to let you understand, etc., etc. And if I only let them see just 5% of me, then only 5% of me is going to get the benefit of interaction. Now, when you travel around the country, some of you may know this, you go to different parts of the country, you can experience that people are put together psychosocially different parts of the country where you go. And my experience in West Virginia, not only this time but the last time is that most of the people here have a very, very thick filter. That they might barely get a high out of them. They won't tell you anything else. They won't say anything else. The last time I was with Bill Harrod at another church, we did a workshop, and all the pastors and the elders got together and had a dinner that night, and I was there. Every one of them, their filter was so thick that I could not have an authentic interaction of the smallest kind with any of them. None of them. The only person I could was a single mom that was there, and her husband was out of town, and we could talk, and we had an honest, real conversation. That was it. The result of that is, if you live in a place where the parent's cup is not full enough, and their filter is really thick, then you're not going to get much out of them. And you're going to grow up fairly starving, not much interaction, and that's going to be the norm to you. So that's how you relate to everybody else. But someone who comes along from a different place or something is not going to know how to relate. So, and I tell you this not at all to hurt people's feelings in any shape or form, but it is no surprise to me that heroin and fentanyl and all the other drugs here are up to here in West Virginia, because the filter is so thick between people, there's no connection. So this person here is starving to death, and this person is starving to death, but they may not even know it. And if they are, they don't know what to do about it. So we go down the street and get the sex, drugs, rock and roll. Whatever that is. Because we have to have something to make me feel alive and something to make me feel stimulated, and that's what we do. And so the thing that's so hard is, like I had this dad one time in the office, and his 10 or 11-year-old boy, dad was being very aggressive with him. And the hair is standing up on the back of my neck, and I'm about ready to intervene. And I finally said to Timmy, Timmy, what is it like for you when Dad talks to you like this? He said, I want to kill him or run away from home. And inside I'm going, hell yeah, I understand that. Me too. And so I said to Timmy, what would it be like if Dad said what he just said it like this? And I rephrased it for him. He couldn't even talk. He just kind of went like this because he never heard it before. It's what he's always wanted to hear his whole life. And he had a little bit of tears and kind of shrunk down into the chair and just mumbled. And I said to Dad, I said, look at the difference. And if you be open to learning how to communicate with your son this way, you could change his life and he would be a different kid. I said, are you interested in that? And Dad said, well, okay. And I said, what's it like for you to hear me talk to you and share this with your son like this? He said, I never thought to say anything like that. And then he said, actually, I've never even heard anybody talk like that my whole life. I said, well, there we go. You don't know what the bullseye looks like because you've never seen it. And then I said to him, you always normalize things for people whenever they're telling you some screwball thing. I said, what would your dad have done like this at 10? Oh, my dad, man, he would have beat me crazy. I said, yeah, so you're far better than your dad was. But guess what? The way your son's reacting is telling you you're not even close to the way you need to do it yet. Timmy's going to grow up and be a drug addict. He has no choice. That's what happens to us. And so what fixes us is getting re-socialized, finding people that want to get re-socialized too, and learning to be open and sharing and figuring out how to thin this filter down and become transparent with each other and do things like that. At this restaurant I told you about, us guys hanging out, we got to know all the waitresses, and some of them would flirt with us a little bit, and this one girl used to tell us all the sexual things she'd do with her boyfriend and try to make us jealous. And one of the guys there was an ex-pastor, one of my good friends. He said to her one time, he said, you know what? If you were my daughter and I had heard that you were doing this with your boyfriend, I would get up in the middle of the night and come down and pound on your door in tears and say, where did I fail you as your father? Tell me where I failed you as your father. And this girl heard that. And she went just like this. And walked away. And she was just like this with us for the whole next week. Completely different person. A week went by. She came over to us, looked at him, and she said, I've never been loved like that my whole life. We had another waitress there one time, 23 or 4 or 5, somewhere in there. And she was coming on to me all sexy and everything. And I said, sweetheart, you don't have to act like you want to screw my brains out to get my attention. You don't need to do that. And that hypersexual 23-year-old disappeared, and there was like a 12-year-old, 10, 11, 12-year-old girl standing there who had never had a drop of care of attention her entire life. And I said to her, this is the girl I'd like to get to know. That's how we were, this group of guys. That's what heals us, is finding relationships and people we can get together like this. That's why I give almost everything I have, except for my kids, to get, and the wife, but to get in the Gospels and observe Jesus relating to people this way. Oh my God. And when I read the Gospels, that's what I read, and when I teach the Gospels, I teach that stuff, and people are going, oh my God, David, I never saw this in there. Well, I didn't either until I went through all this education. And that's how he wants us to be for each other. And so guys get together, we talk on the surface level, we don't get down to anything deeper. And I actually had a chart we were going to bring yesterday, we didn't get it printed in time to bring it. But it talks about from sharing news, weather, and sports to get all the way down to the point where I'm actually sharing what my needs are. And so on and so forth. And so us learning how to connect that way with each other, and we're going to do an exercise when we come back of how we can get in touch with that kid inside and start to give that kid some care. But the problem is, when I haven't had care like that, I don't know what it looks like, I don't know how to give to anybody else. So the friends I'm with, we all hang out because we're injured the same way, but we don't have anything to give each other. We don't know how to help each other. None of us has enough help to give to each other. So we're companions, we're buddies, but we stayed that way for 10, 20 years and nobody ever gets any better. God help us. Let's take a break.